Amy from Play to Learn Preschool. Happy Monday. A few of you have emailed and left comments on my Facebook page about not doing a video on Friday. Sorry about that. Life just got busy and crazy. Just in my personal life, I had some company unexpectedly for the week. I had a sick kid home a couple of days. And then on Friday morning, not my school guinea pig, but my own kids have a guinea pig upstairs, and he passed away a Friday morning. So it's just like a nutty day. So I apologize. But I'm back. So thanks for your patience, and I'm glad you guys were interested in listening to me. So today I wanted to address a topic that comes up a lot on my blog, mostly because I put out a lot of ideas for teaching children their names, how to spell them, how to write them. I make a lot of name things and name activities. Some of my most, oh, thanks. Thanks, Diane. I like it too. I like anything purple. She said she liked my necklace. Anyway, with names, I feel like I spent a lot of time at my preschool teaching kids their names, because learning the names is like a springboard for all literacy learning. So I want to just take a couple of minutes and talk about how we teach names and what I think as a teacher, as having a master's degree in literacy and reading education, about the best way to do it. So first, when we think about our kids, we always think of them in terms of development. So think about a toddler who's learning how to walk. Learning how to walk is a developmental process, right? First, they kind of like do that weird like toddling thing, and they're falling over all the time. And we would never say to a toddler, don't walk like that, it's a bad habit. You're never gonna learn to run if you keep toddling about, right? When a young child is learning how to talk and they say things like, they want you to pick them up and they go, up me, we would never say, don't talk like that, because you're never gonna learn to speak in sentences. That's a bad habit to say up me, right? Because we understand as adults and parents and teachers that learning to talk is a developmental process. First they make cooing noises, and then they say ba 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 ba, and then they start to put two words together like up me. And then when there are 3 or 4, they could say, could you pick me up, please? My legs are tired, right? But we would never expect that from a toddler. And so we need to keep that in mind about how children are in this process of developing. They're developing their walking skills, they're developing their talking skills, and similarly, they are developing their literacy and writing skills. So we have to keep that in mind. The comment that I get the most on my blog, whenever I share on Facebook a picture of my kids doing name work, or any kind of photograph that might show them with capital letters, inevitably, within a minute, I'll have comments from people who say, don't teach them like that. It's a bad habit. You're setting them up for academic failure. Or, some people are like, why do you do that? Which I appreciate. But the people who say or imply that the way that I'm teaching them is wrong, it really irks me, because the truth of the matter is, learning their names is a developmental process, and it occurs in 3 stages. The first part of this developmental process of learning their names is learning to recognize the printed name. And so when they're learning their name, to recognize it, they are not recognizing all 4, 5, 6, 8, 9 letters. They are learning to recognize their name based on the first letter of their name. So much so that when we do these little name recognition games, these are going to be backwards because I'm on the selfie cam, but we have those little games where I play on the carpet in the morning. I've shared that before on Facebook about the name songs. And if they have these 2 names, my 3-year-olds might not be able to figure out which one is theirs, because they both start with an A. They're really focused only on the first letter of the name. The kids will say, oh, look. For example, we changed our calendar, a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of my 3-year-olds ran up to it and said, oh, look, it's Owen's name. It's not Owen's name, it's October, right? But they recognize that the O is for Owen. Just today, I had a magazine sitting out at our school, it's highlights, and I heard a student say, look, there's Hannah's name. This doesn't say Hannah, right? It says highlights. But the students are not attending to the entire word. They are learning to recognize their name based only on that first letter. So we have to keep that in mind, that the first stage of name learning is to recognize it by the first letter. So we're thinking about that. Well, students then, they're not only learning their own name, they start to recognize the names of M is for mommy, D is for daddy, C is for my little brother Carson, or whatever their names are. And they start to recognize the other kids in their class, right? Oh, look, there's, Lena's L. Oh, look, there's Avery's A. Oh, look, there's Josie's J. They're recognizing the friends' names based again on the first letter. So you have to keep that in mind. They're recognizing their names based solely on the first letter. So I want to share a little story. So I do have four of my own kids, and my oldest daughter she's almost 14. But when she was about 2, her name is Leah. It starts with an L. And when she was about 2, we went to the park. And it had one of those benches that had the name of the park on the back of it, like molded into the plastic. The park was called Trailside, Trailside. And she ran over to the bench. She was so excited, this little 2-year-old, and she found the L right in the middle of the bench, and she said, "Mom, there's my bench. It has my name on it." And it was the first time, sort of as a mom, that I came to realize she really thinks anything with the letter L is her name. And that's how our 2 and 3 and our young children, that's how they start to learn their names. And so I want to give you an example of how my daughter was thinking at age 2.5, when she learned to write her name. So the first time she wrote her name, we were out on the driveway with sidewalk chalk. And she was talking out loud as she was writing it. It was really a neat glimpse into her thinking, into how her mind was working. And so I'm going to show you. It's going to be backwards because Facebook does that weird thing with the camera, but pretend like I'm writing the right way. So my daughter gets her sidewalk chalk, right? And I can hear I'm going to write my name on the sidewalk. And I thought that's a great idea. So she writes a big L. I know it looks backwards, just ignore me. She goes, L is for Leah. And then she said, L-E, L-E. My name is L-E. And so then she wrote E. She did this whole thing, they do like the train track E. And she said, E is for Evan. That's my brother's name, L-E. I have got Evan's name inside of my name, L-E-A. My cousin's name is Anna. Anna's name is in my name too. So then she did the A, L-E-A, L-E-A-H. Holly lives next door to me. Holly's name starts with H. And then she wrote the H. So she was not writing her name based on a model. I'd never written it like this for her. Everything, as far as our house was labeled with her name written conventionally, capital L, lowercase e, lowercase a, lowercase h. But the truth is, children are not learning to spell and write their names based on a written model. They're learning it because the first stage is to recognize their name. The second stage is to spell it orally or to name the letters. And then finally, the third stage is when they write it, they're putting those things together. They're saying, I know all of these letters because they're the first letter of all these important words in my life. And so they're really not copying a model the first time they write their names. Now, I know some people are probably thinking, but you have to teach them the right way. And I agree, just for the same reason that my students or my children don't still toddle around the room and they're not still saying, up me. It's a developmental process, right? So as soon as they are able to do more, then we support them into doing more. But to expect a young child, age 3, to write their name with sentence case, capital letter, lowercase, 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 is unrealistic because developmentally that's not how they're learning to spell their name. They're learning it based on recognition and based on the understanding that other people's names start with those letters. So I do promise you though that my students do not leave preschool and start kindergarten, most of them, I'd say 90%, writing with all capital letters. They are writing their names conventionally because something happens when they turn about 5. Their fine motor skills are becoming really good. They're really adept with their hand strength and their pincher grasp. they start to have an understanding and a recognition of all the uppercase and the lowercase letters. It's coming together for them. And so as soon as those pieces are in place, usually at about age 5, then it's easy to transition them to lowercase letters. I promise. So I get a lot of kindergarten teachers on my blog and on Facebook who say, you are setting them up for failure. You're making it so hard for me. And I really have to say, listen, they are not ready. When they're 3, they're not ready to write it with lowercase. Some kids are, but most are not because of those reasons I said, because they're writing their name based on the letters that they know from the world around them. So some of the things that we do to help make that transition to lowercase letters, we shared this one other time, but we do some activities where they match upper to lower. So this is a name activity. It's written, of course, conventionally in sentence case, but then these clothespins are all uppercase. And so they're matching and they're starting to understand. There's not much difference here, of course, but this is the same letter. And we tell them when they come back from school from winter break, like in January of their pre-K year, I make a big deal out of it. Guess what? This is your kindergarten year. This is the year you get to start kindergarten. And so we have to start practicing things the kindergarten way. And they get so excited about that. They're not frustrated with it because they've got the fine motor skills because we've been writing and practicing and building up those hand strengths and those other skills that they need. But then when they have everything in place, we say, this is the time. You can start to write it like a big kid, like a kindergartner. And so we'll start working on transitioning to the lowercase letters. Another activity that we do is, this is like a little name book, and it's one of the name things that I have on TPT where you just enter your class list and then it prints out. But we start practicing these name books. So this is my name, it's Justin. And the big J and the little j are for jack-o'-lantern. And they start to make that connection. These are the same letters. We use the big one for the first letter, but then we use the lowercase letters. U is for umbrella, but it's the same letter. So they start to make that connection. S is for sun, T is for tree. And they start to make that connection, and then it's so easy to transition them to writing it with lowercase letters. I promise. Another thing that I want to say is that when I write their name, or when I've written it in the room, it's always sentence case, capital with lowers. It's really important to have that model for them so that when they start to write it, they've got the model. But at the beginning of the year, I always have my students show me how they write their names. If they come in not writing anything, not knowing any letters, it's easier to start with the capitals. Because for an example, with this E, this uppercase E is so much easier. One vertical line, it's supposed to be 3, but you know how the kids make the train tracks. Horizontals is so much easier than over, around, up, down. That is so hard for a student who does not have good fine motor, who can't make any marks on a page. You want to start with something that they can be successful at. And then as soon as they're starting to transition over, then we hold them accountable for writing the capital letter and all lowercase. I promise. But when they're 3, we start with the uppercase. And so sometimes I think people see that I've written it in uppercase for them to practice writing it, and that's because they've not showed me that they have any understanding of lowercase letters. They can't recognize them. They can't write them. They're still maybe struggling with the uppercase. So for me to have them try to copy a lowercase letter, it's an exercise in frustration. And I do everything I can do around here not to make them frustrated. I want to be able to set that bar that they can reach it. It's an attainable goal. And then I can raise the bar and raise the bar and raise the bar until I get them where they want. But if they're here making scribbles and I set the bar way up here, you have to write with uppercase initial consonant and lowercase other letters, the chance of them meeting that goal is so slim. And so as teachers, it's Vygotsky, right? Lev Vygotsky, who says you have to set that zone of proximal development. So there's 2 zones. The zone of proximal, which is what they can almost do with just a little bit of help from a qualified instructor, from a teacher, from a parent, from somebody who can work with them. That zone of proximal development for my students is writing their names in uppercase. And then I raise the bar until they can write it conventionally. But if you would set the bar way up here and start them where they're making scribbles on the page. That's what they call like the frustration zone. I don't know, that's not a zone for Lev Vygotsky, right? So we've got the zone of actual development, which is what they can do, and we always want to work in that zone of proximal development, which for my preschoolers who are 3 and early 4s, it is writing in uppercase letters. And so every time I post something about name writing and I get those comments, this is what I'd like to say. This is how I'd like to explain how I make a decision that's best for my children. It's how I understand that children develop step by step by step, not this huge leap into something that's very difficult and very complex. The other thing that I forgot to mention about the lowercase letters is, for the uppercase, for the most part, they are visually very different. There are a few that are similar, like the P, uppercase P and the uppercase B are similar. The M and the W are similar. But for the most part, the 26 uppercase letters are visually very distinguishable from each other. And that cannot be said for the lowercase letters. The B, D, P, Q, they're exactly the same letter, right? It just depends if it's right side up or left or right. It's exactly the same. And so they're just not ready. It's so much harder for them to write with the lowercase letters. And that is why I choose to let them write with capital letters. It's why I think that writing with capital letters is not a bad habit. It's really just a stage of their development. It's really just a step along the path of this literacy road that they're on. And I promise, I'm not setting them up for academic failure. We're not giving them the end of their literacy journey, but it is a step. And so it's okay with me when they write in capitals. My students who struggle, I model capital letters for them because I'd rather them write it in capitals than not write it at all. And I feel that I can really defend, not that I need to, anybody who thinks that we're setting them up for failure. We're not, I promise. In the same way that we support students who are learning to talk, support students who are learning to walk, we support students who are learning to write by doing these little steps that will, I promise, eventually get them to write their name with a conventional uppercase and lowercase for the rest. I promise. If you have older kids and they're still struggling with that, a couple people said I've tried to get second graders to remember to use a capital. I taught second grade for a long time. It's tough, man, second grade. They gotta remember the capital, they gotta remember the punctuation, it's tough. But if you have kids who are still struggling, like in kindergarten, if the kindergarten teachers are saying, they're still writing in all uppercase, I would say we need to double check a couple of things. Are they fine motor? Are they capable of making those smaller motions? Do they need extra practice with those smaller nuanced motions on a paper? And then second, can they identify those lowercase letters and match them to the uppercase letters? If they can't, that's where we need to start before we start worrying about them writing. So, hey Ashlyn! Oh, it's so fun to have students watching. Hi everybody! So that's my explanation for capital letters and why I don't think they're a bad habit, and why I think that when we're supporting young children in learning to write, that it is okay and in fact developmentally appropriate to allow them to write with capitals. Feel free to agree or disagree with me. Leave it in the comments, be respectful, but I'd love to have a chat with you about it. So, all right, that's it for Monday. We've got some awesome centers set up here in my classroom for this week. We're learning about spiders. So I will share with you, I think we've got like 5 really cool centers that I'll share with you tomorrow. I hope you can join me at about 1:30 Eastern tomorrow afternoon, and we'll try to be back every afternoon on Facebook. Thanks everybody. Have fun playing and learning with your kids. Bye-bye.